is Thursday, March 19th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, with Netanyahu firmly in Israel's driving seat, we take a close look at where the Prime Minister of Israel may be taking his country. 4 years into Syria's bloody civil war, is the international community coming around to Assad? And later on the show, it is the final installment of our series on women in Israeli politics, which concludes with the woman that was sent into hiding, so to speak, or so they claim, and that would be Tzipi Livni. Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin here in Israel, where the dust is beginning to settle following an intense period of election campaigning and an even more dramatic election day, in which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu won a resounding victory, paving the way to his forming the next government. Netanyahu's astounding election day rebound, closing a 4-seat gap in the polls and going on to beat his left-wing rival, Yitzhak Herzog, by 6 seats, put him firmly in the driving seat with the ability to form a coalition of his choosing at his leisure. Now, 3 months after calling snap elections, Netanyahu is now poised to form the government of his dreams, made up of his natural partners from the right wing and the religious parties. Netanyahu now has to face the international community, something he chose to ignore over the past few weeks, though some, including British Prime Minister David Cameron, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, and even Indian President Narendra Modi, who also blogs in Hebrew on his Instagram file, were quick to congratulate him. The White House is yet to make that call. But spokesman Josh Ernst said President Barack Obama would only call Netanyahu after the latter got the official nod from Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. The White House did express concern over Netanyahu's apparent disavowing of the peace process with the Palestinians, saying President Barack Obama still believes in Palestinian statehood, even if Netanyahu no longer does. Joining me in studio, our Channel 10 diplomatic correspondent, Moav Vardi. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ed.
You did not sleep now for 3 days, I think. Yeah. Something like that. And, of course, by Middle East analyst, senior analyst for Times of Israel, and Walla Avi Sischaov. What a pleasure.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report that takes a closer look at the challenges the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, will be facing in his next term as he forms a government. Let's have a look.
Yes, it was a clear-cut win for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israelis preferred a forceful leader whose agenda centers around strong armed security. But the euphoria of victory will soon fade away, and Netanyahu will have to face some big challenges, most of them already pretty familiar.
Mr. Netanyahu said he will not allow a Palestinian state. He will continue with settlement activities and dictations. I believe he was not campaigning in the elections. I believe he was honest and he specified his truth. Mr. Netanyahu has done nothing in his political life but to destroy the two-state solution.
Indeed, Netanyahu might have great trouble defending his position in front of the international community and specifically the International Criminal Court, especially in case of a narrow right-wing coalition. Netanyahu will have minimum maneuverability when it comes to the Palestinians and their will of a state. Hamas, on the other hand, is pretty satisfied with the results, which strengthen their position that there's no one to negotiate with. From whichever way you look at it, a two-state solution seems to only be moving further and further away.
There is no difference between Israeli political parties following the electoral victory of Netanyahu's Likud party. For us, there is no difference between the Zionist regime's political parties. They are all aggressors in nature.
This not-so-warm dismissal of Netanyahu is probably the least important problem Israel has with the Iranian regime, as the nuclear talks between Western powers and Tehran move closer towards their conclusion. Even though the chances of reaching an agreement do not appear that high, Netanyahu will have to refresh his anti-Iran campaign following the not-too-successful speech to U.S. Congress earlier this month, and his fruitless attempts to persuade the West not to be so eager to get closer to Tehran. So while Hamas is happy, the PLO is upset, and the Iranians simply don't care. Following events of recent months, it's safe to assume there also weren't too many smiling faces Wednesday in the Obama administration.
The strong ties between the United States and Israel will endure far beyond this election. And that has been true for generations now.
Yes, U.S. President Barack Obama remains committed to working very closely with whomever wins the elections, and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry declined to comment on the results. But the deteriorating personal relations between Netanyahu and Obama mark one of the lowest points in U.S.-Israel relations, say officials. Some of them find it difficult to believe relations can be salvaged.
Yes, Yaeli. Netanyahu's sharp veer to the right in the final days of the campaign also drew reaction from the Palestinian leadership with claims that election result had buried the two-state solution. Also joining us on the phone now, Senior Palestinian Authority official Dr. Abdallah Abdallah. Dr. Abdallah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, clearly the results in Israel, taking a look at the latest numbers, 30 for the Likud. I mean, there's no flinching about this. Israel has voted. They voted right wing. What is the reaction within the Palestinian Authority? And it's almost absurd to say a peace process because, let's face it, one does not exist. But is there a chance for negotiations in this term?
I think the victim of this election is the peace process. And those who will suffer, maybe at the beginning there will be the Palestinians, but then, and the final end, the Israelis will suffer as well. Israel is exposed to the danger that is existential danger with its continued occupation of the Palestinian land and subjugation of the Palestinian people. It's not the Iranian atomic program that endangers Israel, threatens Israel. Unfortunately, the composition of the Israeli society was indoctrinated in the past years to be tilting towards the extreme, the discriminatory, the racist, unfortunately.
And Dr. Abdallah, I'm asking you, though, when it comes to the Palestinian people, if indeed we're looking down the barrel of a no-negotiation phase now between Israel and Palestine.
No negotiation whatsoever.
For a while. I know. But hold on. If we're looking at that, the Palestinian people and the Palestinian Authority, what is the Palestinian Authority planning to do other than taking its agenda to the international community? And do you think that we might be looking at a third intifada if nothing moves along?
Well, listen, this intifada doesn't come as a decision taken at one point. It is the continued subjugation of the Palestinians, the demolition of houses, the arrest of young kids, 10, 12 years old. This will lead sometimes to the uprising that is dangerous to all. I think the Israelis will not be in a comfortable situation if they continue with the policy that Netanyahu is espousing.
Time will tell. Dr. Abdallah Abdallah joining us from Ramallah this morning. Thank you for being with us in studio, Moav Vardi and Avi Siskarov. You know what, Moav, I will start with you. Throughout this entire election campaign within the country of Israel, nobody was discussing the Israeli-Palestinian issue. It wasn't even a factor in any campaign, oddly so. In the international community, that is what they care about, and this is the time Netanyahu will have to start dealing with it. He disavowed himself from the Bar-Ilan speech. Where is that just political rhetoric? What is he going to do now? Can one even tell what's going to happen with that?
I think it is political rhetoric. I think that Netanyahu, this is not his dreamed coalition, because Netanyahu is very well, I would say, let's say Netanyahu knows very well the pressure that's going to come by the international community in the coming months, maybe in the coming weeks. You know, the Americans held the French and the international community to step back and let this elections campaign goes without any interruptions from the UN, from the ICC, from the international community, from Security Council. Now the timeout is over. Now the French going to come forward with a resolution to the Security Council claiming that there's going to be a Palestinian state with the parameters that Netanyahu so hardly tried to reject during the past negotiations with Secretary Kerry. And you know, the Europeans are not going to sit on the bench anymore. They're going to start and do something in order to make things go forward. Now, Netanyahu knows very well that in the past coalition that he had, in the past government, Tzipi Livni and in some way Yair Lapid as well, served him as like the real foreign ministers of Israel. This gave him quiet in the international community, because there was negotiations going on for 9 months. There was, you know, peace talks. Nevertheless, that it went nowhere, but there was a process, and the
pretense of a process.
Right, but the process itself gave Netanyahu the room to maneuver. Now Netanyahu has no room to maneuver. He has only Naftali Bennett on his right, without Tzipi Livni and Yair Lapid on his left. Now what's going to happen? In the next weeks to come, or months to come, the international community will want Netanyahu to do something. Anything that Netanyahu will want to do will require him to confront Naftali Bennett and the right wing. Now, if Netanyahu doesn't do anything, the international community has a leverage, you know, to stop backing Israel in the international arena. In the Security Council, the United States not only not gonna veto a Security Council resolution, it might support it. In the ICC, Netanyahu he must have the backup by the international community to sabotage, to torpedo the motions by the Palestinians to go to the ICC. In order for Netanyahu to get this support from the international community, he must give something. But this is exactly the point. Anything that he will want to give to the international community will end it up in confrontation with Naftali Bennett.
The coalition at the end, we have to remember, I mean, I know we're saying political rhetoric. This is a man who stood on stage and actually said several days ago, there will not be a Palestinian state under my leadership, which leads me to Avi Yisachov. And I'm asking you the million-dollar question. All these international moves that Mahmoud Abbas is planning, can they actually appease the Palestinian people, as you and I just discussed in studio before the show began? Can they appease the Palestinian people? Do the Palestinian people have within them the energy, I'm serious, for a third intifada? Because at this stage, if we're listening to the Israeli rhetoric, nothing is going to happen on a two-state solution over the course of the next several months.
I don't have a clear answer for that.
Obviously.
I have to be honest about that. I don't have an answer for the million-dollar question. You know, I just need to remind you of something that Maav said. In the last round of negotiations, when everything stopped because of the release of the 4th round of the prisoners, Livni was the one that said, Abbas is to blame. Abbas was the one that failed the negotiations. Now, Netanyahu won't have Livni as the token, as the one that will say...
He doesn't have a scapegoat.
Exactly.
Right.
Everyone will blame Netanyahu in this case. Now, about the Palestinians and the reality on the ground, I must say that, you know, when you go into Ramallah, when you go into Bethlehem, or even Hebron and Jenin, it seems like, you know, people don't have the energy to bubble or to explode. But if you would go to Balata refugee camp, and if you would go to Jenin refugee camp, that's a completely different answer over there. Because over there you see the anger, not only towards Israel, by the way, but also towards the Palestinian Authority. And all the time that we have this, the economy issue here, meaning they don't have salaries, they don't have enough money, they have unemployment going higher and higher and higher. Yes, there is some kind of a potential for something to start. Don't call it intifada. You know what? Call it a small-scale explosion, escalation, and that might happen.
Let me challenge you, because for these guys in the refugees camp, another round of negotiation is not the answer. Of course, they will say, okay, another round of negotiation is going to lead nowhere. So maybe Abu Mazen's decision to go to the track, not to the bilateral track of the negotiation, but to go to the international community and to deliver, to deliver the guys in the refugees camp some kind of present or of proof that he can get a Security Council resolution on Palestinian state. He can take Israel to the ICC, might serve him better in order to quiet them down from going to the street rather than another round of negotiations.
It's going to serve him better, of course. Why? Because then again,
because he basically did that irrespective of Israel wants. He did that surrounding Israel.
It's going to, then again, serve him better because also with the refugee camps, they're not going to like Abbas. The fear of Abbas is that the anger from the refugee camps is going to leak into the big cities. And he needs to stop it over there. You know, every Monday and Tuesday you have some kind of an operation of the Palestinian security forces in Balata and in some refugee camps.
What is strategy to stop it from leaking into the big cities?
For the meanwhile, then again, he needs some kind of an achievement. He needs some kind of an international support.
And then
now
the international track is going to deliver him the thing that he needs to
again, for the meanwhile, it's like a pill against headache for some bigger
and the question is, how bubbly are those camps? That's the thing. How much can he maintain that? Because at the end of the day, we don't know the Israeli government's or the Israeli administration agenda for the Palestinian partner across from him. But I'm asking, in those camps, let's say he does not deliver that present, as Moav is saying, who are they going to turn against, Israel or against him? That's the question.
First, against him, probably.
Okay.
Then, against Israel. Now, he needs the money. I mean, Abbas needs the money. And Israel is holding for the last 4 months the revenues money, the taxes money. And Netanyahu, his first decision will need to be, am I going to renew the transferring of the money to the Palestinian Authority or not? Because he knows that it might explode. You know, the IDF is preparing itself for a round of escalation April 1st, meaning in 10 days. In 10 days, this is the plan. This is the preparation of the IDF, you know, for months, for the last 2-3 months. This is what Central Command is doing, preparing for another round of escalation in the West Bank.
Tomorrow, I'm asking you, if we're saying that this was rhetoric, that Prime Minister Netanyahu stood on that stage and vowed no Palestinian state under my leadership, but come April 1st, if this thing bubbles up, what can he do? I mean, what can he do towards his constituency from within and towards the international arena? As you said, his carte blanche is up when it comes to the international arena, isn't it?
Netanyahu has a long reputation of maneuvering. Maneuvering this boat in the storm. He has some I would say valves in order to set something out for the Palestinians, like for instance to renew the transfer of the tax money, the tax funds. For instance, to go to the international community and say we want to negotiate, not maybe Palestinians.
Can he do that after promising just several days ago that under his prime ministership nothing like that's going to happen?
Yeah, for the right-wing constituency, he can do whatever he likes as long as he's not signing the Palestinian state. The problem for him is the international community, the lack of faith. The lack of faith in him as someone who can deliver, who comes to the negotiations table in good faith, right? Because look at the White House announcement last night. It was quite something. The White House said we're going to reevaluate our policy in the Middle East following Netanyahu's statement. Now, what's going to happen? Maybe the Americans will say, no longer this negotiations game. You want a Palestinian state? Come forward. You don't? We're going to an international track. We're going to a Security Council resolution stating, you know, Clinton parameters or Obama 2011 parameters to set the parameters for future negotiations. You like it, you do it. You don't like it, Mr. Netanyahu, you have to face it alone.
Right. No, and you know, and wondering, you know, if that will be the American move in these 2 years that Obama has left. But looking forward towards the security cooperation, Avi, that's the one other thing I want to touch with you when it comes to Israel and Palestine. First of all, it's odd that this issue never came up. We were hearing yesterday, throughout the elections, we were hearing yesterday from people sitting in the studio on the right-wing persuasion that it's a marginal issue, so to speak, although we know it's not the Palestinian-Israeli issue. But when it comes to, you know, Israel and Palestine at this point, with, you know, with Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Palestinian Authority, if, let's say, Mahmoud Abbas doesn't survive it, are we looking at a West Bank that's moving towards Hamas? Are we looking at a West Bank that is taking a more extreme view? Are we looking at, you know, if the security cooperation stops, what happens to the Palestinian Authority? Can it even survive?
Not really, not really. I think that the Palestinian Authority depends upon the Palestinian security forces. You know, the minute that the security coordination will stop, just think about the potential threats.
It's a house of cards, yeah.
Tens or hundreds of Islamic Jihad and Hamas supporters might do whatever they feel like. You know, I'd like to remind you that in the year of 2014, the Palestinian Authority arrested 1,000 members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Now, think about this situation without them arresting 1,000 members of Islamic Jihad and Hamas at the year of 2015. You have so many potential threats here, security threats. So yes, the Shin Bet and the IDF will operate and work and arrest, but at the end of the day, they need the support and the coordination with the Palestinian Authority. They cannot just do it by themselves.
Yeah,
well,
yes,
maybe they
yes.
can, but we will suffer. We will pay a price here if we won't do that.
No, if they do it on their own, it becomes, you know, fait accompli pre-Oslo, right? That's the idea of walking in
and
here.
This is one of the $1 million question, you know. At which point, Abbas will say, enough for me, I cannot bear it anymore, and just like Menachem Begin did back then in the 80s, said, enough for me, I'm going home. And I'm going to leave it to Israel. And I'm not sure that Netanyahu, that is against the Palestinian state now, will be so much enthusiastic about Abbas going home.
Exactly. Don't be overrating Netanyahu's statement in a presidential in an elections campaign. Come on, Netanyahu doesn't. Netanyahu's one and only goal is status quo. As long as he can maintain the status quo, is fine. He doesn't want a binational state. He doesn't want a confrontation with the Palestinians. He would release the tax fund in order to.
Not even with Hamas.
Not even with Hamas. Netanyahu wants only quiet in order not to do nothing. Now the thing is that the burden is on the Palestinians and the international community, whether they will have the leverage on Netanyahu to do something. Either like Avi said, a burst of violence on the ground by the refugees come that leak into the cities, or by the international community that will face Netanyahu with facts that he cannot ignore anymore.
Now, but speaking of facts that not to be ignored anymore, I'm wondering out loud with the two of you if the process is dead entirely. Ali Waqid sat in the studio yesterday and said that there is chatter, and actually, Avi, you know, that's to you. There's chatter in the Palestinian Authority that there's a document circulating that the Palestinian Authority, or within Palestine, looking at the idea, or some Palestinians are looking at the idea of a binational state, that they themselves have given up the notion of a Palestinian state. Is that true? Is that something the Palestinian people will ever accept? Because Moav, that's not something that would ever fly here under this regime right now, right?
No, but they are saying, look, this is what might fear or threat Israel. You know,
if they say binational.
Don't give us a state, okay, so let us keep the situation as it is.
Yeah.
And at the end, in 5 years, in 10 years, when we, the Palestinians, we will have a majority here between the River of Jordan and the Mediterranean, what can Israel do then? What, an apartheid state that the whole world will jump on its neck? And this is when they're saying, look, okay, let us leave the situation as it is, the status quo, and at the end we will find ourselves in a binational state. Now, for them, it's the best. It's the optimistic. Why? Because you look at the demographic, you look at 5-10 years, then again, if they will be given the right to vote, and I don't think that anyone will give them the right to vote, but just imagine to yourself, it's either an apartheid state,
unless somebody stands up in the campaign and says, run to the ballots, the Arabs are voting. But which, you know...
And I want to say something else. You know, what the Palestinians have in mind right now is a model that what happened in 1996, meaning when Netanyahu was the prime minister, and he opened up the Western Wall tunnels.
Right, the tunnel.
And he didn't agree to withdraw from Hebron. He didn't agree to do nothing, just like then. And then we had 3 days of an escalation, more than 3 days. So it was 17 Israelis getting killed and 80 plus Palestinians getting killed. And at the end, Netanyahu
gave up Hebron.
Exactly. I totally agree. Netanyahu, look, Netanyahu has already gone further along the track of a two-state solution. He cannot withdraw from that. Withdrawing from that will end up in a binational state that Netanyahu reject binational state. So Netanyahu will have to maneuver. He hopes for a status quo quiet from the international community, that he can appease the international community, he can appease the Palestinians. Maybe he is right. Maybe there is a way, you know, to go between these two leverage, the leverage of the Palestinians and the leverage of the international community. But don't be stating this announcement that no longer Palestinian state and Netanyahu was the one.
Can it break this coalition from within? Though I know
Netanyahu was the one who signed on the Hebron agreement.
I completely agree.
And gave up Hebron. Netanyahu is very pragmatic. He's not Naftali Bennett.
But can his
He's not
constituency from within the Likud survive that? If he does that move yet again, and that's a great point, the 96 scenario, what happened there. But if he does that again, Will this type of, I mean, because he does have a very right-wing coalition. He's staring at that right the line.
Yeah, he has this right-wing coalition in the past term, in 2013, in 2014, when he launched a negotiation with the Palestinians for two-state solution, releasing or signed to release more than 100 Palestinian prisoners. And he did that.
Who will he send to negotiate?
Exactly, who's the scapegoat?
It's Lieberman or Bennett?
No, and he did that with Naftali Bennett in coalition and with all the Likud ministers, and you know, he can maneuver. It wasn't because of Tzipi Livni. He did it because he understood that this is the path he needs to go through. Other than that, he's going to face an isolation from the world, a violence on the ground from the Palestinians. He's going to go to this specific track in this future coalition. And Naftali Bennett, okay, so Naftali gets more settlements building in the settlements. That's what's going to happen, okay? But Netanyahu is not going to declare annexation. He's not going to declare no more Palestinian state. Forget about it. Netanyahu is going to go in the exactly track that he goes all along the way in the past terms, meaning making the sound that he is going to reconciliation with the Palestinians, negotiation, anything, but not signing anything. That's what's going to happen.
And not, okay. I wonder, though, as we said, how long can the Palestinian street actually face that? And how much is the international arena really resolved to try and help the Palestinians, so to speak? That's also a question, isn't it? Yeah. Is there going to be a push there? Is there going to be somebody backing them up? Is this move in the international arena going to work, do we think?
I think that many of the international community players are going to support the Palestinians now, especially the EU, the European Union. Moav knows much better than I. They have plans right now. Right now, as we speak, they already plan what to do in order to push the Israelis. It wasn't just for no reason that already yesterday we heard the EU saying we are willing, we are preparing to start to renegotiate. Now, they are preparing something. The Palestinians understand it. This is why we're here at Barikat also. So I think this is going to be a very shaky and stormy period in the next couple of months.
In the next couple of months, you know.
I just want to add, Yael, I totally agree with Avi. For the Palestinians, for Abu Mazen, the right-wing coalition, and for Barikat maybe, the right-wing coalition is better than a unity government in Israel. Why? Because for them, a unity government with Herzog, with another round of negotiations, is only keeping the lie going on of future negotiation, future Palestinian states, with nothing on the ground happening. For them, a right-wing coalition that will support the international community, moves like in the ICC, like in the Security Council. This is the best Abu Mazen can get all along that Netanyahu is prime minister. If Netanyahu is prime minister, Abu Mazen and Saeb Erekat prefer it to be a right-wing coalition that the international community going to force Israel rather than a Herzog coalition that's going to another round of negotiation.
With scapegoats, as Avi Yisrael said, with people who can be scapegoated. Gentlemen, I'm not going to call you boys. Fascinating stuff. The topic that nobody discussed during these elections in Israel, sadly, but you know, we have done so now. Stay with us. When we get back, Syria's civil war is now in its 4th year. President Bashar Assad no longer an international outcast, or is he? First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Thank you for staying with us. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition. The place we say hello and good morning to Ruthie Sinai. Good morning. And I want to say that, you know, although Israeli elections are over and much as Israelis, including myself, would like to think that the world deals only with them, no, there's other news. No. I know. Shocking. So for all the headlines we missed while, you know, scanning the news or vice versa, on this March 19th, very tired journalists in the studio. What have we missed?
Okay, we are going to go back to the elections in a minute. Of
course.
But first, so the Daily Mail.
The Daily Mail.
Which is always good for great headlines.
True.
Frankfurt in flames.
Yeah!
Okay.
Frankfurt is burning.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened actually, when you look at some of those pictures, it really looks frightening. What happened was that the European Central Bank has built itself a fancy new headquarters, and as they were going to move into these headquarters, anti-austerity protesters.
Let's flash our money in front of the people who don't have it.
Really. Yeah. So there were, 350. Yeah, yeah. Look at this. Look at this. So
that's reminiscent of something we won't. Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that is great.
So it's kind of the anti-globalization and some anarchists and some Greeks and a lot of people who really don't like the. I'm
theorizing with people in the studio this morning. Jake Warchafter here, also I-24 News contributor. Are we looking at do we think that we're looking at a possible new wave of Occupy streets, social? We might.
Frankfurt might be.
Might be. Might be.
Okay.
It's looking
hard
like
to
it.
tell. Yeah, it doesn't look good. And there were dozens of cops injured, 350 arrested, thousands of police. It was
yet again
quite a big
proof that when people don't have work or money, they get upset.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So on to something that I'm sure interests you and not our other guest here. No, I shouldn't say that. Breastfeeding.
Yeah. You never know.
I'm fascinated by it.
You are? Okay. All right. I take it all back. Okay.
Breastfeeding, please.
Okay. So new study published in The Lancet is brought to us by Forbes.
Yes.
Breastfeeding may be linked to higher IQ in adulthood.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Now this is a huge study.
Come on.
Yael, shush. This is a huge study, 3,000 and some participants who were followed for many, many years. And apparently this IQ effect, which has to do with amino acids in mother's milk,
blah, blah.
Yeah, blah, 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 it lasts through the 30s. Afterwards you get stupid. Afterwards you get stupid. No,
I think that happens irrespective of everything, that after your 30s you kind of... But
it's just chemical. I mean, it's not social emotional as well in terms of the bond of the child building up the IQ.
According to Lancet, it's chemical.
The man is fascinated by breastfeeding.
Yeah.
It's all chemical, but I have to say that my problem with that is, and I'm sorry, I'm passionate about this issue, that it just gives more capital to
la leche.
Yeah, to la leche. It gives more capital to women who then bash women who don't breastfeed, who choose. It's a choice. It's a choice.
I agree. I agree. I knew it would wake you up.
There we go. Yes.
Right. So I promised you to go back to the elections, and we are. Times of Israel.
Yes.
Has a great story about the elections at the Jerusalem Biblical Zoo. Fabulous zoo, for those of you who haven't been there.
Who did the elephant vote for?
Well, the elephants, the main idea was to see if they could get the ballot, if they could put the ballot in with their tusk.
Oh my God, there's so many things we can say about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
The pachyderms were, the trunk, not the tusk, of course.
Yeah.
And there were
some people in the Zion. Well, I'm not going to say it.
People were asked to vote. It was a day off. It was a holiday, the day of the election. So the zoo was packed, and people were asked to vote for the most popular animal, and the animals were asked to vote, and the lions, of course. The lion's platform was he called for a drop in the price of meat, and
which many people in Israel were calling for.
Yeah, the elephants were calling for a wide coalition.
Look, I got to say, whatever you think about the results of the election, the fact that it was a holiday and that people had time with their kids.
And sales.
It was amazing to see the families out there, and I think it ups the participation rate in the election to have it as a real day off.
Maybe that's why there are elections every 2 years in Israel.
It's good for the economy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the female elephants, Tamar, Susanna, and Michaela, they stampeded ahead. Ha, ha, ha. Okay.
Yeah, moving on.
Madonna. What would we do without Madonna? I mean, a week without Madonna. Yeah. Okay, so do you know where she grew up? You probably don't.
Detroit, right?
Not far, Rochester, Michigan. Okay. And the other day she said she was never going back there because I can't be around provincial thinking people. She told Howard Stern this. Okay, so of course the mayor of Rochester, Michigan, you could sort of hear and see the steam coming out of his ears. And we have the story here. This is the mayor of Michigan, and he's saying, we have the most students who build robots, and we have the most this and the most that, and why don't you come and see for yourself and stop denigrating our great town.
Yes.
One wonders why she does these things.
Yes.
Okay, sadly all the
same we have.
Just one bronze mask.
One bronze mask. Go.
Found of the god Pan, the god of the shepherds.
Right.
Found in the Golan Heights.
Really? Do we have that? Golan Heights.
We should. We have a story on it. Anyway, it was a very big find. Huge mask.
Wow.
If people can see it, it's
wow.
Yeah.
And that can be found on the I-24 News website.
Yes, it can.
Okay, that's where. Turn to the I-24 website because things are found in this area as well. Okay. Ruthie Sinai, pleasure, lovely.
Ernie and Bert. That's the story I was waiting for.
I know.
Ernie and Bert.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Sunday. Oh, Monday. Thank you, Ruthie Sinai. Sure. As we move along. This week marks 4 years since the start of Syria's bloody civil war. Now, everyone can agree that that war, which has so far claimed more than 200,000 lives, I will repeat that number, more than 250,000 people nearly, and created millions of refugees as a humanitarian tragedy. But if at the start of the conflict the desired outcome was clear, 4 years on, things have become rather less straightforward. In the early days, it was clear that the brutal dictator, so to speak, as he was called and deemed by everybody, Bashar Assad, who massacred his own citizens that were trying to remove him from power in the same fashion as their fellow Arabs in Egypt and Tunisia had to go. Today, his fall from power could produce undesirable results, notably the takeover of Syria by the Islamic State. So to further discuss this, we're joined in studio by I-24 News contributor Jacob Wirtschafter. Jake, good morning to you. Good morning. And before we break this down, let's take a look at the following report at where Syria stands today, if at all.
When Bashar al-Assad came to power in Syria in 2000, he cultivated an image of a modern leader, a reformist beloved by his people. That image was shattered 4 years ago, when what started as a civilian uprising developed into a full-fledged armed conflict. Throughout, Assad has refused to show signs of weakness. Despite mounting civilian casualties, accusations of war crimes and the use of chemical weapons, his rhetoric has grown increasingly uncompromising. Like in an interview with AFP in January 2014.
Should Syria lose this battle, that would mean the spread of chaos throughout the Middle East. This battle is not confined to Syria and is not, as Western propaganda portrays, a popular uprising against a regime suppressing its people and a revolution calling for democracy and freedom.
Western nations have repeatedly called for Assad to step down, until the rise last year of the jihadist group that came to be known as Islamic State. With holds on both Syria and Iraq, they've gained a reputation as ruthless and bloodthirsty. Now, Assad's departure from power is no longer a sine qua non for a resolution of the conflict. Recently, the UN Special Envoy for Syria described him as a part of the solution.
He didn't create the jihadists created themselves. What he did was to not attack them as consistently, as ferociously as he has attacked the moderate opposition, which has allowed the jihadists to strengthen significantly. And so, they really serve his overall political strategy.
Assad has the unswerving military support of regional allies like Iran and the Lebanese Shiite movement Hezbollah. Over the past year, he's regained a lot of territory from Free Syrian Army rebels. Today, he controls 40% of the country, including major cities, save for Aleppo and Raqqa. And his opposition is struggling to speak with a united voice.
Right now, Bashar al-Assad doesn't feel he has any competition. He doesn't need to come to the negotiating table in good faith because he's winning militarily and there's no political competition.
But 4 years of armed conflict has wrought massive destruction. Close to 12 million people have been displaced, including 3.8 million who have fled to neighboring countries, with the casualty toll close to 210,000. In divided Aleppo, residents in rebel-held areas are yearning for change.
For us, Bashar al-Assad has fallen a long time ago. People are trying to cope, but we hope the opposition will bring us a better alternative.
We feel Assad has been long gone, but the rest of the world has given him the green light to stay in power until now.
Assad seems to be making up political and military ground, but despite support from Iran and Russia, his next challenge could be financial. Even though there is no end in sight to the conflict, experts are already saying reconstruction will likely take decades and require billions of dollars.
Joined in studio by Jacob Wirtschafter, I-24 News contributor, spending many months and weeks in the Arab world. I'm looking at that, Jake, with you, and you know, the interesting thing about the United States, CIA director came out earlier on last week and said that maybe Assad is a fait accompli and he's the I'm ad-libbing now, okay? I'm paraphrasing, sorry. That he might be the one to do, you know, that he has to stay in power because the alternative is even worse.
Well, John Kerry followed up on that over the weekend, right? And he's speaking to what was the Face of the Nation. He basically said, we have to talk to Assad.
That is veering straight off John Kerry's line for the last 4 years, which is amazing. What has the international arena come to understand, and are they right in saying that?
Look, right now, the diplomatic game around a resolution for Syria seems to be run out of Moscow. In April, we're going to be seeing another Moscow conference with elements of the Syrian opposition and the government in a dialogue about a political solution for Syria. The West has been paralyzed on this. There seems to be a Franco-German split on Syria, interestingly enough. I mean, France is pretty much committed to a military solution, i.e. a rebel victory in Syria. The Germans have sort of stepped back from that. They're actually talking to Assad and at the same time expressing support for the political elements of the opposition. We're talking about politics and negotiations and John Kerry and the French and the Russians, and we keep on forgetting to talk about the Syrians. And I just point out, you know, we were focused on the election here at the beginning of the week. There was another chemical attack. There was a chemical attack in Idlib. We know that at least 19 people died of chlorine gas. And, you know, again, backing out to a regional perspective, I'm just wondering if people might respect President Obama more in this region, if his red lines meant something, because we're now in a 7th, 8th, 9th chemical attack since the red lines were announced.
No, this an incredibly valid point, because I think that's one thing that maybe American foreign policy does not understand, that people take a listen and take a look when people draw red lines in the sand and then forget to, you know, move them or slide them back and forth. Speaking of which, we're also joined on the phone by regional spokesman for the Middle East and Africa of UNICEF from Amman, Simon Ingram. Simon, good morning to you. As Jake Wirtschafter mentioned here, of course, the chemical attack earlier this week, but we cannot forget when it comes to Syria and all these political who to speak with, yes or not, we are looking at so many displaced people. What are the numbers that we're looking at now?
Well, the numbers are truly horrifying, quite frankly, and they just get worse day by day. Just to give you one example, when we look at the number of children who are now considered to be in need of urgent humanitarian assistance inside of Syria, we're looking now at about 5.5 million children.
Jesus.
That's an enormous number. It's more than the population of some small countries.
Right.
And by the way, that compares just 1 year ago with the number which was 4.3 million, a huge number in its own right, but it's gone up 30% in 1 year. So I think that just gives you one, graphic example of the way in which this crisis is escalating, really to quite astonishing levels.
Astonishing, like much of the disregard of the international arena, many can say. And also, a quick question from Jake Wirtschafter to you, Simon.
Simon, I got to speak to you a lot when I was in Amman working for Syria Direct, and my question from you from here today is, are you guys doing any better in terms of collecting the money pledged by international donors to help these children and to help these homeless families in Jordan, in Lebanon, and in Turkey? I mean, the numbers keep on going up, and it's not clear to me that the dollars that are needed to support these people who are in trauma are really there for you.
Well, it's certainly true that the longer that this situation, this crisis drags on, the harder it is going to get to generate and to raise the sort of money which is needed. And the sums are growing, of course, all the time. This year, for example, UNICEF is looking for about $1 billion for its programs in Syria, inside Syria, and around the region among refugee populations and host communities affected one way or another by the crisis. That's an enormous amount of money. Now, last year, we were looking to raise something like 2/3 of that amount, and we managed to raise somewhere between 70 and 75% of that amount. This year, the prognosis is not looking wonderful, it has to be said. There is, at the end of this month, a major donor conference, which will be taking place in Kuwait at the end of March. This has been a very important event for us on two previous occasions in terms of raising the money we need. We hope it will be again. Donors have been incredibly generous, but at the same time,
Simon,
one can only understand in their situation. They're looking for an end to this crisis.
Simon Ingram, valid points. We do hope you guys succeed. As we mentioned, it's the people of Syria, it's the children of Syria that the world seems to be disregarding. When you get back, the sixth and finals in a series on women in Israeli politics. Welcome back. It is still Thursday, March 19th, 2015. This is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I am still Yael Levi. Thank you for staying with us. And you should have, because we only have really good-looking women in the studio right now. But that was most likely the wrong line to say as we're leading into the most feminist endeavor that this news this news show has taken. And this is the exclusive series brought to us by Tal Shalev, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, and the amazing photographer, camera woman, Lauren Tulila, as well. Hi. Over the course, good morning, over the course of the last several weeks. And that's a closer look at the Israeli women running in these elections, and in these elections that concluded in the last 24 hours, and taking a look at women and political strides that they're making in the Israeli arena. The last woman that the two of you had the chance to sit down and speak with was Tzipi Livni, maybe the most polarizing female in these elections. And Tal Shalev, I'm going to let you start by telling us what it was like and what she means to these elections now, 2 days after.
Well, first of all, I'd like to open and say that if anyone deserves the title, the First Lady in Israeli politics today, I think it's definitely Tzipi Livni. She is the First Lady of Israeli politics. She's the strongest woman we've seen in this in the Israeli politics in the past few years. She's sat in various ministerial roles. The most prominent of them, of course, was foreign minister, but she also was justice minister, regional cooperation minister, immigrant absorption, housing minister.
Head of the Kadima party, sweeping many votes at a time.
Opposition leader between 2009 and 2013. And in these elections, of course, she was the wife in the couplehood of her and Bougie Herzog, Isaac Herzog. They joined forces. She was under a constant attack in these elections, and that is one of the reasons she was one of the most interesting people for us to follow. We might say objectively there is a problem, a political problem with voters with Tzipi Livni. She has passed 4 parties in her political career. She started out in the Likud. She moved to Kadima. Then she left Kadima after she failed to win the leadership again and established a Tnuah. And this time she joined the Zionist Union.
All the way to the left, so to speak.
All the way to the left, but she is a survivor. And that was one of the reasons it was extremely intriguing to speak to her. Let's hear what she had to say.
Let's take a look. Tzipi Livni.
אני ציפי לבני, ואנחנו פועלים במרץ רב ובהרבה מאוד אנרגיות ואמונה כדי לשנות את דרכה של ישראל ולהוביל אותה לעתיד טוב יותר. נכנסתי לפוליטיקה, כל העניין של זכויות והעצמת נשים לא היה חלק מהאג'נדה שלי. נכנסתי בגלל העניין המדיני, ואפילו חשבתי שהעיסוק רק בנושא של העצמת נשים הוא עיסוק לא נכון, כי אנחנו מספיק חזקות כדי לעשות את מה שאנחנו מאמינות בו. וככל שהתקדמתי בפוליטיקה, גיליתי עד כמה לחלק קשה לקבל אישה חזקה בפוליטיקה. מערכת הבחירות האחרונה מבחינתי עדיין גרמה לי לגלות עד כמה חלק מההתייחסות אליי בגלל שהיא אישה, ניסיון לגמד, בעיקר בתחומים שמאוד חשובים לאזרחי ישראל, כמו ביטחון, כמו היכולת לטפל בנושאים האלה. אז אנחנו צריכות להוכיח יותר את הדברים שמובנים מאליהם עבורי. אבל זה דווקא גרם לי להתחבר יותר לנשים. זה לקח לי המון שנים להגיד אחיותיי, להגיד סיסטרס. כל העניין של הסיסטרוד היה דבר לא מובן לי הרבה שנים, ואני היום לגמרי מחוברת לזה. כל המקומות שאני עוברת, בדרך כלל כששואלים, אני גם מוסיפה עוד משפט. ואני אומרת שהמונופול על הביטחון הוא לא של גברים בלבד. וזה מתקבל היום בהרבה מאוד אהדה. זה השלב שבו מקבלים את המחיאות כפיים בעולם לא רק מנשים, אלא גם מגברים. כי דווקא מול כל האיומים שאנחנו ניצבים, הזווית הצבאית היא זווית מאוד צרה. ובשביל זה יש גנרלים טובים בצבא. עדיין לצערי כמעט כולם רק גברים, אבל עדיין זה המקצוע שלהם. אבל כשמקבלים את ההחלטות, מי שמסתכל על זה באופן צר חוטא לביטחון. תפיסת הביטחון הכוללת היא הרבה יותר רחבה. ובשביל תפיסת ביטחון כוללת צריך לדעת לעבוד עם העולם, וצריך לדעת לעבוד עם מנהיגים אחרים. וצריך את אותה יכולת לגייס אנשים למטרות שלך. וגברים בדרך כלל פחות טובים בזה. אני בתחילת הקריירה שלי למשל חשבתי שאני לא יכולה להיחשף ברמה אישית, ואני צריכה לשמור על עצמי חזקה. כי הבחירה לצערי של נשים בפוליטיקה זה או שאתן נחמדות וחלשות, או שאתן חזקות וביצ'יות. ובחרתי להיות החזקה בעניין הזה. היום אני יכולה לעשות גם וגם. אני משתדלת להתחבר לשני דברים. האחד זה התחושה הפנימית של מי אני באמת, מול הסרטונים שמפיצים עליי. והדבר השני זה המטרה שאני צריכה להשיג. לא תמיד זה קל ולא תמיד זה מצליח ב100%. היו במערכת הבחירות האלה ימים מאוד קשים. אבל את יודעת, אפילו להגיד לך שהיו ימים יותר קשים, זה דבר שלקח לי 20 שנה להגיד אותו. אני חושבת שלפני 5-6 שנים לא הייתי אומרת את המשפט הזה, כי גם הוא כאילו מביע חולשה. אני היום אומרת, היו לי ימים קשים, אבל אני יודעת למה אני בפוליטיקה, אני יודעת מי אני ומה אני, ואני יודעת להתמודד עם זה.
First of all, that was beautiful. I'm going to start with Tal, actually I'm going to start with you on Tzipi Livni, because I think Tzipi Livni, with the bombshell announcement that she gave about 12 hours before Israelis went to the polls, that she's giving up the rotation. And you said before we saw the piece that she's a survivor. As she moved from right to left, do you think she's surviving this next round?
Well, this one's going to be very interesting because now, actually, for the first time in years, she is going back to be without any title.
Without any title.
So it'll be interesting to see if Tzipi Livni can be just a regular lawmaker sitting in the opposition, doing the standard parliamentary work. I'm not sure that after all the years that she has been a minister and leading high-profile jobs with totally different significance and substance, actually, to what she's doing. I'm not sure she can run back into just to being a standard politician.
And she wasn't very good in the opposition as head of the opposition.
She wasn't very good as head of the opposition, and she actually ran into Netanyahu's government. One of the critics against Livni is that the only thing that she thinks about and she considers is her seat. She's definitely been under attack for
Which
that.
one will argue that nobody would ever say that about a man. I'm sorry.
I think that's it. No, I think that there are two kinds of. No, I think when a politician moves 4 parties and moves from the Likud to the Zionist Union,
the criticism is valid.
The criticism is valid.
Okay.
But she definitely, in this campaign, as she mentioned in our discussion, she was under attack. Definitely, part of the attack was chauvinistic. If there was there's a part she talked to us that we didn't put inside the report, the piece, but that she says, if I was a man joining Isaac Herzog, nobody would be speaking about me overshadowing him. People would be treating it like a real partnership. And I think the idea of the partnership, the rotation agreement, just to think outside the box, that is something that might be feminine, but still in this world in Israel, the Israeli public was not ready to digest that that idea of a rotation, of a coupleship, of a joint leadership.
Of a joint leadership in that respect. But I want to speak about partnership because you guys brought us how many women?
6.
6 women. And the partnership, it was a tour de force of the two of you, Tal Shalev, diplomatic correspondent, Lorraine Toulilan. Lorraine, when you captured these women so well, when you were shooting them as they are politicians, What did you find in terms of their, is their femininity coming out, and what were you looking for?
Yeah, I was looking for the feminine side. The idea of those portraits was to create something more personal, more intimate, and get to know them in their own environment, to get to see them in a private moment outside of all the fuzz of this campaign. And we were looking for the details, to make it more feminine. So the black and white beginning, for example, in order to make it look like more glamorous, for example, and focusing on the hands, the hair, all that kind of
all those
stuff.
little details that actually, I think that was beautifully done until, you brought over these, I think the personal aspects of these women. Would you conclude and say, because Tzipi Livni begins the piece in saying that she thought the feminine issue should not be at the forefront, but then realized how hard it still is to be a woman in Israeli politics. Conclude this for me, where do women stand in Israeli politics in 2015?
Okay, well, in 2015, first of all, the good news is that we're going to have 2 more women in the next parliament. We're going to have 20 today after the final results. They're not final yet, but basically we're going to have 29 women in the next parliament. So that is definitely an achievement. We're on a good path to, but we're still far away from equality. But I want to say about these women we followed, and I don't agree with many of them. We had 1 woman from each party. I don't agree with many of them. But I have to say, as a young woman in Israel, this series and the fact that we got a chance to look at them in this way, it did give, and this is a personal note, there is women to look up to in this system, whether they declare themselves feminists or whether they do feminist work or whether they put the feminist agenda at the forefront of their discussion. Yeah. We should be proud of them. They are role models, and I hope that they will inspire other young women to do the same and join them in the future.
It was interesting to see as well how well they are balancing their job and their the family life, of course. They are very influential political women.
No, definitely.
Yes, it was interesting to see their point of view.
Their point of view and juggling all those things together, which, sadly, we are still the ones who juggle. And yes, Tal, you're right. It is an optimistic note. It's maybe a little crack in that ceiling, in that high ceiling. Girls, you're not going anywhere because I'm having so much fun. And, of course, Tal Heinrich is my role model.
And I have some more feminine stories, very empowering ones.
Very empowering ones.
Yes.
And for the web review and the spiral viral that is what it is, it's Tal Heinrich. There we go.
Well, let's start with a very interesting woman. She's an Indian woman who just canceled her wedding. She was at the altar, basically, with her future husband, and it was in India, as you know, that it's matchmaking. You don't necessarily choose your partner for life, but she discovered that he was stupid. She decided to quiz him, and she asked him a very, very simple math problem, like to add up 15 plus 6, and he wrongly replied with 17. So she decided.
She quizzed him.
Yeah, she quizzed him like before. Yeah, and she decided.
I'm sorry, dude. You're way too stupid.
Exactly. This is how she said it, and
I find it the most
said,
empowering story of the morning. I'm going to try that at home now.
And wow. I try it like late at night or something like this.
Yes.
And the groom's family. This is what her father said. The groom's family kept us in the dark about his poor education. Even a first grader can answer this, and of course the groom's family tried to convince her to stay, and he will be better educated in the future, but this didn't help.
Yeah, and he doesn't cook. Yes.
And here's another very, very empowering story. It actually happened a year ago. A basketball team in the U.S., Lincoln Middle School, they had a cheerleader with Down syndrome. Her name is Desiree Andrews, and she was cheering on her basketball team. She was apparently watching Glee, and she loved this show, so she wanted to be a cheerleader. It was her dream. And then during a game last year, just bullies started picking on her.
Right.
And they were back then 7th graders, and now this year they're 8th graders, which means this is their final year. So they decided back then just to step out of the court.
The players,
exactly. The players, once they saw this was happening at the side of the court, and this year they decided to name their home court Dee's Arena or Dee's House. So this is just beautiful. And it got me thinking this morning, because we usually say that kids could be so mean,
They are.
but when kids are sweet, it's true. It's sweeter, right?
It's sweeter. It's much sweeter than anything else. Very true. And it gives one hope that maybe we'll grow up to be sweet adults. Yes.
Speaking of adults, some were very, very upset on a train in the UK this week because the train was so packed, so crowded, and then there was this announcement. I will read it for you. We're going to be like sardines on this train. So can I ask that only slim people sit on the 3-seaters? If you are fat, then it is simply not going to work. This was the announcement on the train. Well, Tasha is nodding her head, but she's like skinny.
I see you haven't taken the bus lately, but one of the most annoying things in Israeli buses, there's one seat that it's like very, very narrow.
Very
but
tiny.
if you're slim, you can have 2 people there, and if you're not, then you can have only 1. So,
but come on.
Just saying.
But come on. Yeah,
people were really, really, really upset and offended. And you know, then there was
the revolt of of overweight people. I'm going to be politically correct.
And then the train published this statement. You know, sorry, very sorry. Well, they said that the majority of passengers on the train took the comment in the spirit in which they were intended.
In which it was intended.
I guess not the majority. Maybe the majority of them were slim.
I'm not a fattist. I'm just a joker. Okay,
and
one last one.
And I don't know if you heard about this, but now you can't on Facebook status. You can't click not like the status, like the feelings, feelings and emoji. You can't choose the feeling fat because fat is apparently not a feeling. So there was
fat is not a feeling. It's a
there was a petition against it with 70,000 signatures, and Facebook decided that they're going to.
They took
remove
away my
this.
favorite option. I'm actually quite upset. Sadly, all the time we have. I am feeling happy. When we get back, financial news, Boko Haram militant group has killed thousands, isolating the West African countries it terrorizes and weighing on their economies. We will hear more about it. Stay with us. First, we go to the news, and this was an amazing segment with all gorgeous, intelligent women. So stick around, more of that. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition. On this March 19th, 2015, way post-elections, we're not going to talk about Israeli elections. Those were the elections mentioned. Rather, we're going to talk about my favorite person in the entire world, and that would be Daniel Roth.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, you'd like to flee right now, I'm sure. But Economy Magazine correspondent Daniel Roth with some very important news actually here this morning. And what have you brought us today?
Boko Haram.
Yes.
This is an ongoing story.
The people overshadowed by ISIS, but not to forget, incredibly vicious, violent, and terrifying group. Yes.
Right. Been operating since 2002, operating in this sort of full frontal, violent way since 2009, and famous since last year when they kidnapped hundreds of
young girls.
They're also causing havoc to the economies in which they're operating,
which can't really afford havoc being raised upon them. Yes,
absolutely. Okay. It's already isolated, already poverty-stricken.
Well, let's take a look exactly at what you're speaking about and break it down from there.
Boko Haram attacks have taken a toll on life, security, and economy in Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. In the north of Cameroon, truckers look for alternatives such as military escort and substitute routes as safety measures against the Islamist group. The slowdown in delivering food, timber, and other building materials is raising prices and creating economic challenges for local populations.
You have to search among the few truckers who still want to take to the road, and with the insecurity, there is a rise in prices from $30 to $48 per ton.
Price hikes are putting pressure on an already embattled economy. The pressure of thousands of refugees and a massive slowdown in tourism is having a growing impact. Boko Haram have killed thousands, and they are known in the area for killing drivers, stealing the loads, and burning the trucks, according to the Reuters report. The region is isolated and even more so now.
Yesterday we left Kuseri at 7 in the morning. We got here at 6, after being on the road the whole day. Before it would take us 3 hours to travel from Marwa to Kuseri, now it takes us 7 to 18 hours.
As countries such as Chad look to military solutions in the face of 6 years of Boko Haram terror, stability seems a far-off reality for a vast number living and working in the region.
So the impact Boko Haram has on the economies that it's operating in, so to speak, is something that can be, I mean, first of all, we're looking about years of damage of repairing if they are even dismantled or if they become a well, not non-existent, but if they are off the political map, right?
Right, and it's interesting. Some people refer to them as operating within the Borno state or in Chad and Cameroon and Niger and Nigeria. But of course, according to them, they've carved out caliphate in these sort of on the borders of these countries. The north of Cameroon is, of course, what this report's about. Right. And for them, they're not ruining economies; they're changing economies. For them, this is a revolution in power there. For everyone else living there, they're murdering, they're stealing, they're kidnapping,
raping, and destroying them. And wreaking havoc, as you said. When you're referring to the caliphate, so to speak, I remember that a few months ago, ISIS was trying to issue their own currency. Are we looking at something? I mean, Boko Haram, as you said, claim they are controlling a certain area. What does the economy look like within that area? You know, how are people living off of who's paying them? I'm asking really many stupid questions. Yeah.
So one of the things that they do is they go to local leaders, local mayors, and they extort money from them. They run government, so to speak, not really something. Some
form of administration.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But they do it by getting, and this is the big kicker. They get about $1 million per kidnapping per hostage, both internationals
and money coming from? That's the where is that money coming from?
Oftentimes private money. In some cases, in some European countries, they actually pay for hostages. The governments, the public pays for them. In many cases, it's private payments, families, what have you. But this is one of the big sources of funding. It's not a regular source of funding as it might be taking monthly fees from local mayors.
Locals that they've,
they also, as mentioned in this report, they're hijacking truckloads of things. They're burning the trucks and they're taking the things. So this is how they run. They run by fear and by stealing.
The attempt to try and stop them is not faring that well from within the communities they're operating in, is it?
It's not. Nigeria just reported that they're in the final battle against Boko Haram.
That's not the first time they've said that, I think.
Right. I don't think so. Yeah. Chad's been fighting them. They've enlisted their army, but so far nothing has really worked. As you can see, they still control
no, very much so. And as you mentioned, the world woke up only when I think the girls were kidnapped, which was a year ago. Yeah. That famous campaign that many world leaders and their wives were posting hashtags "Free Our Girls." Yeah. And I think we need to remind people those girls have not been freed yet. So there's that as well. But definitely a force to be reckoned with in Africa, a continent that clearly can't afford to reckon with those forces. On that depressing note, we're locking you in studio.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for that was more death and destruction on the morning show, but for the lighter side of things, to something completely different.
Yeah, I always feel great. We come here, we talk about rape and murder, and then I have to move to the...
And then you have to move...
Entertainment. Yeah, new TV shows. That's important.
For the masses. Yeah.
We're coming off our election here in Israel, and
before we start, actually, really before we start, how did the election go for you guys? Not talking about the results. What did you do yesterday? You worked.
I worked, yes.
You worked.
I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't.
We had to remind people it was a day off for Israeli civilians and citizens, right? Yeah. What did you watch on TV?
What did I watch on TV?
Yeah.
Say I-24. Say I-24.
No, no. What you're talking about the actual political stuff?
No. What did you watch in terms of television series that you're going to lead to in terms of what we need to watch?
I will tell you in a second because it will be one of my items. It will be one of my items. But
You're losing the plot. Yeah.
No, okay.
Yes. Moving ahead.
I'll tell you in a second what I watched yesterday, but let's begin with a few series that debuted this week, and I'm actually cheating a little bit because the first series is actually a returning series that changed platforms. We're talking about Community.
Okay.
It's a sitcom. What, you don't?
I'm looking at. Do you know Community? Community. Yes, I know the thing with the classroom.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
It's about a group of people at a community college, a group of misfits.
Right. No, I do.
It's a very quirky.
Yes.
It's a very quirky, nerdy comedy that was on ABC for 5 seasons. It was never very high in the ratings. It had a lot of turmoil over there. After 3 seasons, the creator of the series, Dan Harmon, was replaced.
And now.
And he was back. After a season, they gave him back. And then after 5 seasons, they canceled it. And now it's back on Yahoo TV.
We got to discuss Yahoo TV.
You have to explain also that they promised 6 seasons and a movie.
Well, no, there was a campaign called 6 Seasons and a Movie.
An avid watcher.
Yeah, he is. It's a wonderful series. It is a wonderful series, which has always gotten a very small, very loyal fan base here.
About to say, and the 2 viewers are right here. Yeah.
No, but it's very interesting because this is Yahoo TV's first real foray into the sort of Netflix, Amazon
Netflix thing.
Yes, and they're doing it with something that already has production pipeline in place. You know, they had all the sets, all the actors, and everything.
Because I mean, Yahoo TV, which I'm hearing so much about, but I think Katie Couric's foray into Yahoo TV did not work so well. So
no, because I think the idea of having sort of, let's say, talk shows or news shows on these platforms, it's not really what people are looking for.
No, you tap in to have you tap in for.
They're looking for
something to make you laugh, or something to forget things.
They're looking for scripted or sort of, we haven't had reality TV on these platforms. We did. We had on AOL, actually. I mean, they're trying that on AOL. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying on AOL things like Fatherhood, or actually an Israeli series was sold to AOL, Connected. And it's going to be launched on there.
Yeah. The new, but
they haven't tried it yet.
But they haven't tried it yet because and what Yahoo is doing is a weekly series. It's not the sort of Netflix, Amazon model of putting the whole thing out there.
And moving on to a different series.
Yeah. Well, a new series that I like this week is called iZombie. It is surprisingly.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
It is surprisingly,
iZombie.
iZombie. It started as a comic book, surprisingly, by Chris Robertson, who is a wonderful sci-fi writer. And a lot of people were saying, we don't need another zombie series.
That was my next line. Do we really need another zombie series?
But it's not your typical zombie series.
Well, let's take a look at the trailer of iZombie and see if it's something that we need to actually laugh at. Come on, let's take a look.
My name is Liv. I used to be passionate, inspired, alive. Now I'm mostly just hungry. And a zombie, so there's that. As day jobs go, this one was pretty grim. Until I got a taste of something more.
Good morning to you, too.
Okay. So this was about a girl who used to be a medical student until she turned into a zombie.
Right.
And now she works at a morgue where she naturally eats brains. But the twist is, when she eats the brain, she sort of gets a vision of the person, person's life, and then she solves the crime.
That's perfect. It's kind of like CSI.
So it's a zombie CSI, and it's made by Rob Thomas, who was the creator of Veronica Mars.
Which is a great series.
Veronica Mars was a great series. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Not to be confused with the Matchbox 20 guy.
No, not to be confused with the Matchbox 20 guy.
I love it. This is like the geek segment of the show. I mean, nobody was over. Yeah.
So he knows his detective shows, he knows his teen angst, and he knows his romance. So
I'm still stuck in Buffy, but okay, yeah.
It's actually really fun. It's a fun show, and it's been getting good reviews. And now let's go to what I was watching on elections.
Yes.
On election day.
What were you watching?
Which was Kimmy Schmidt, the unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
How is that?
It's really good.
That's the
Tina Fey. It started off slow. It's the new Tina Fey show. It was supposed to debut. Speaking about changing formats and changing the way we watch television, it was made for NBC. And after the whole season was made, 13 episodes, they decided not to air it, and Netflix bought it and put it on as a whole season.
Like they do with House of Cards, basically.
Like
you can binge watch it.
You can binge watch it, and I love this model because
we all love this model.
And so I watched a lot of Kimmy Schmidt. It's after 30 Rock, everyone was expecting her next series.
We have to watch the trailer.
Okay,
we will. I love the premise. Let's take a look at the trailer.
A miracle today in Durnsville, Indiana. 4 women rescued from an underground apocalypse cult. It's all still here. I'm not going back. What? I'm staying here.
Who is this?
I'm your new roommate. I will be very comfortable in here.
You got a secret.
I am one of the Indiana Mole women.
From the news.
Today in Durnsville, Indiana.
That's phenomenal. This is kind of like the stories of all these girls that are being kidnapped in Iowa or in Utah. Yeah, I'm making stories up now.
She was held. They were held. 4 women who were held for 15 years by a priest who said that the apocalypse has happened.
Yes, love it.
And now
that's our Christmas song. Apocalypse, apocalypse. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have seen it.
I saw the trailer several times.
So
I have no life. But it's faring fairly well. It started. I mean, the reviews on it.
It does. I mean, it starts a little bit sort of slow. Not slow, but when it starts off, you feel like, how is this premise going to hold up a show?
Right.
But it's basically the main character played by Elle Kemper, who is sort of
who's a
holding
fabulous
it.
actress.
She's wonderful. You know, all of these female comedians that are making their way now on
and
television.
And she brought in also, I don't remember the blonde actress's name, Tina Fey, that brought in people
Jane
from 30 Rock. Exactly. Jane Krakowski was like her secret weapon in many ways.
But they also have some new actors like Titus, who is the black gay roommate. But the idea is that, the main joke is that she doesn't know anything about the modern world, but also like it's bringing in the quirky, weird humor, unexpected humor of 30 Rock. But it's different. It's less fast-paced. And there's not as many characters as there were. A lot of impressive guest appearances, as you can imagine, from Tina Fey. You have Martin Short. You have Nick Kroll.
And I'm sure Oprah's going to jump up at a certain
she
point.
wasn't there yet.
Likely. Oh yeah, but speaking of that, we have very little time left. But I just want to discuss on Netflix some third season with you guys. House of Cards. Any of you watched the third season?
I did.
Insane, no?
I was not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I know.
It actually lost me after the first season.
I know. It's like this parallel universe. I'm sorry. It was on my mind. I had to share this with everybody. But that was it for us this morning. I know. Avril and Tzvi of the Culture Magazine. Do watch the Culture Magazine and the Economy Magazine for my 2 favorite men in the world who are in studio. But that was it for us this morning. I-24 News. Don't forget to watch us. To check us out on Facebook, Twitter, all those social networks, and tune in tomorrow morning for another edition and part of it, the best of the morning edition. That was it for us today. Have a wonderful day.